Sarah stood by the window in her bedroom, watching the workers set up white chairs in the backyard for her mother's wedding tomorrow. The afternoon sun made the decorations sparkle. At 15 years old, Sarah had mixed feelings about her mother Jessica getting married again. She was happy that her mom found someone after 5 lonely years, but something about Richard, her mom's fiancé, bothered her. "Sarah, can you come help me with these flower arrangements?" Jessica called from downstairs. Sarah sighed and turned away from the window. Her mother had been stressed all week, trying to make sure everything was perfect for the wedding. Sarah wanted to be supportive, but the bad feeling in her stomach wouldn't go away. When Sarah got downstairs, she found her mother surrounded by white roses and lilies. Jessica looked up with a tired smile. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she had dark circles under her eyes. "Thanks, honey. Can you put these roses in the small vases? The guests' tables need to look perfect." Sarah nodded and started working on the flowers. "Mom, is everything okay? You seem really stressed." Jessica paused and pushed her hair away from her face. "Of course, just wedding jitters. Tomorrow I'm marrying the man of my dreams." But Sarah noticed her mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. The front door opened, and Richard walked in carrying bags from an expensive store. He was tall with perfect dark hair and always wore expensive suits. He smiled when he saw Jessica. "There's my beautiful bride." Richard put down the bags and kissed Jessica's cheek. "I got you something special for tomorrow." Jessica's face lit up as Richard handed her a small blue box. Inside was a diamond necklace that must have cost thousands of dollars. Her mother gasped. "Richard, it's too much." "Nothing is too much for you," Richard said smoothly, helping Jessica put on the necklace. Sarah watched them carefully. Richard was always giving expensive gifts, always saying the right things, but something felt fake about him. When he looked at Sarah, his smile never seemed real. "Sarah, I got something for you too," Richard said, handing her a smaller box. Inside was a silver bracelet with a heart charm. It was pretty, but not nearly as expensive as her mother's gift. "Thank you," Sarah said politely, putting it on. "You're welcome. Soon we'll be family, and I want us to get along." Richard's voice was friendly, but his eyes were cold. Later that evening, after Richard left to meet his friends for a pre-wedding dinner, Sarah helped her mother finish the wedding preparations. "Mom, are you sure about Richard?" Sarah asked carefully. "You've only known him for 8 months." Jessica stopped what she was doing and looked at her daughter. "I know it seems fast, but when you meet the right person, you just know. Richard is successful, kind, and he loves us both. We're lucky to have him." Sarah nodded, not wanting to upset her mother before the wedding. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that Richard was hiding something. After her mother went to bed, Sarah sat at her computer. She had tried once to search for information about Richard online, but found very little. He had told them he grew up in Chicago and moved to their town for business 2 years ago. He owned a company that sold medical equipment, and he traveled a lot for work. Sarah typed his name into the search bar again. Richard Maxwell. This time, she added more details. Boston, family, business. Richard had mentioned once that he used to work in Boston. The search loaded, and Sarah's heart stopped when she saw the results. There was a picture of Richard with a woman and 2 children from a Boston charity event last year. The caption read, "Local businessman Richard Maxwell with wife Linda and their children attend hospital fundraiser." Sarah stared at the screen in shock. Wife? Children? The picture was definitely Richard, the same man who was going to marry her mother tomorrow. Sarah's hand shook as she saved the picture. What should she do? If she showed this to her mother tonight, it would break her heart. But if she didn't, her mother would marry a liar tomorrow. Sarah printed the picture and several other articles she found that mentioned Richard's family in Boston. Tomorrow would be her mother's wedding day, but Sarah knew it couldn't happen. Not like this. Not with a man who had been living a complete lie. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed with the printed pictures and articles spread around her. Every time she looked at the photo of Richard with his other family, her stomach hurt. The woman in the picture, Linda, looked happy. The two children, a boy and a girl around 10 years old, had Richard's smile. Morning came too quickly. Sarah heard her mother moving around downstairs, already busy with wedding day preparations. She gathered all the evidence into a folder and hid it under her pillow. She still didn't know what to do. "Sarah, wake up, honey. The hairstylist will be here in 30 minutes. Jessica called up the stairs. Sarah dragged herself out of bed and looked in the mirror. Her eyes had dark circles, and her brown hair was a mess. How could she face her mother knowing what she knew? Downstairs, the house was full of activity. Jessica's two best friends, Diane and Emma, were in the kitchen drinking coffee. They would be bridesmaids at the wedding. The dining room table was covered with makeup, hair products, and jewelry. "There's the junior bridesmaid," Diane said when she saw Sarah. "You look tired, sweetie. Wedding jitters keeping you up too." Sarah forced a smile. "Something like that." Jessica was on the phone with the caterer, making sure everything was on schedule. She looked stressed but happy in her silk robe, her hair already in rollers. "Everything is going to be perfect," Emma said, squeezing Jessica's shoulder when she hung up the phone. Sarah watched her mother, wondering if she should say something now, before the hair and makeup people arrived, before the day really began. But Jessica looked so happy. Sarah couldn't bring herself to ruin this moment. The next few hours passed in a blur. The hairstylist fixed Sarah's hair into a pretty updo with small white flowers. The makeup artist made her look older than 15, which Sarah usually would have loved. But today, she barely noticed. By noon, Jessica was getting into her wedding dress in her bedroom. It was simple but beautiful, with lace details and tiny pearls. Diane and Emma helped her with the zipper and arranged the short train. "Oh, Jess, you look amazing," Emma said, wiping away a tear. "Richard is going to be speechless." Jessica looked at herself in the full-length mirror and smiled. "I can't believe this is happening. After Mark left, I never thought I'd find love again." Mark was Sarah's father, who had left them when Sarah was 10. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching. Her mother deserved to be happy. But not with a liar. Not with a man who already had a wife and children. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, "can I talk to you for a minute? Alone?" Jessica looked at her daughter and must have seen something serious in her face. "Of course. Ladies, can you give us a moment?" Diane and Emma left the room, closing the door behind them. Jessica sat carefully on the edge of the bed, trying not to wrinkle her dress. "What is it, honey? Are you nervous about the ceremony?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to show you something." She pulled the folder from behind her back where she had been hiding it. "What's this?" Jessica asked, opening the folder. Her smile faded as she looked at the first picture. "I don't understand. This is Richard. But who are these people?" "I found it online last night," Sarah explained. "There's more. Articles about Richard and his medical supply business in Boston. They all mention his wife, Linda, and their kids, Jason and Mia." Jessica's hands began to shake as she looked through the papers. "This can't be right. There must be some explanation." "Mom, I checked everything. The articles are real. The picture is from last year. Richard has another family in Boston." Jessica stood up suddenly, the papers falling to the floor. Her face had gone white. No, this is wrong. Richard would never." She picked up her phone from the bedside table. "I'm calling him right now." "Mom, wait." But Jessica was already dialing. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. "That's strange. He always answers my calls." She tried again with the same result. Just then, Jessica's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Richard. "Running late. Traffic. Be there soon. Can't wait to see you." Jessica stared at the phone, then at the evidence scattered on the floor. "Sarah, what am I going to do?" The wedding starts in 2 hours. Everyone is already arriving. Sarah took her mother's hands. First, we need to know if this is true. We need to talk to Richard face to face and see what he says. Jessica nodded slowly, a new determination replacing the shock on her face. You're right, and if what you found is true. She didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah saw something change in her mother's eyes. Jessica was not a woman who would be lied to or made a fool of, not even on her wedding day. Let's find Richard, Jessica said, picking up the picture of Richard's other family. Right now. Jessica quickly changed out of her wedding dress and put on jeans and a blouse. She didn't want to confront Richard while wearing her wedding gown. Sarah helped her mother remove some of the pins from her hair, but there was no time to take out all of the fancy hairstyle. What do I tell Diane and Emma? Jessica asked, her voice shaking. Just say you need to speak with Richard about something important before the ceremony, Sarah suggested. When they opened the bedroom door, Diane and Emma were waiting in the hallway with concerned faces. Is everything okay? Emma asked, looking at Jessica's changed clothes. I need to talk to Richard right away, Jessica said. Sarah, can you check if he's arrived yet? Sarah nodded and hurried downstairs. The house was filled with activity. Flowers were being delivered. The catering staff was setting up in the kitchen. Through the windows, Sarah could see guests already arriving in the backyard, finding seats for the ceremony. Sarah's heart was beating fast. She didn't see Richard downstairs, so she went to check the small guest room where he was supposed to get ready. She knocked on the door. Richard, are you in there? There was no answer. Sarah tried the handle, and the door opened. The room was empty, but Richard's tuxedo was laid out on the bed. His overnight bag was open on a chair. Sarah looked around and noticed Richard's phone charging on the nightstand. That was strange. Why would Richard leave his phone behind? Sarah went back upstairs to tell her mother. He's not here yet, but his things are in the guest room, including his phone. That's why he didn't answer your call. Jessica frowned. Why would he say he was in traffic if he left his phone here? Just then, they heard a car pull up outside. Sarah looked out the window and saw Richard getting out of a taxi. He was wearing casual clothes and carrying a small bag. He's here, Sarah said. Jessica took a deep breath. I need to talk to him alone. Can you keep Diane and Emma busy? Sarah nodded. She didn't want to leave her mother, but she understood this was between Jessica and Richard. Jessica went downstairs while Sarah explained to the bridesmaids that her mother needed some time alone with Richard before the ceremony. Pre-wedding jitters, Sarah said, not meeting their eyes. Mom just wants to talk to him. Downstairs, Jessica met Richard in the hallway. He looked surprised to see her not in her wedding dress. Jessica, what are you doing? It's bad luck to see each other before the wedding, Richard said with a nervous laugh. We need to talk, Jessica said firmly. In private. She led him to the small study at the back of the house and closed the door. Richard looked confused but followed her. What's going on? Is something wrong? We have less than an hour before the ceremony starts. Jessica took the folder from under her arm and opened it. She placed the picture of Richard with his other family on the desk between them. Who are they, Richard? She asked quietly. The color drained from Richard's face. He stared at the photo, then at Jessica, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I can explain, he stammered. Please do, Jessica said, crossing her arms. Explain why you're in a photo with a woman named Linda who is described as your wife. Explain who those children are. Richard ran his hand through his hair, looking trapped. It's complicated, Jessica. I'm listening, Jessica said, her voice surprisingly calm despite the storm inside her. Linda and we're separated. We have been for almost 2 years. The divorce is almost final, Richard said quickly. I should have told you, but I was afraid you wouldn't understand. Separated. Jessica picked up another article from the folder. This is from 4 months ago. It mentions you attending your son's school event with your wife. Richard's face changed. The panic in his eyes was replaced by something harder, colder. He realized he was caught. Fine. Yes, I'm still married. But my marriage has been dead for years. Linda and I stay together for the kids and for appearances. My business partners in Boston expect a family man. He reached for Jessica's hand. But you're the one I love. We can still make this work. Jessica pulled her hand away as if burned. You were going to marry me while still married to someone else. How is that going to work exactly? Richard's jaw tightened. No one would have known. I travel between here and Boston all the time. I could have managed both situations. Both situations, Jessica repeated, her voice rising. You mean both families, both wives. Outside the study, Sarah pressed her ear against the door. She couldn't hear everything, but she could tell from her mother's voice that things were getting heated. She hoped her mother was staying strong. The study door suddenly opened, making Sarah jump back. Richard stormed out, his face red with anger. He didn't even look at Sarah as he rushed past her and up the stairs. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears, but her face showing strength. Mom, Sarah asked quietly. What happened? Jessica pulled her daughter into a tight hug. You were right about him. Thank you for showing me the truth before it was too late. Sarah hugged her mother back, relieved that Jessica believed her but sad to see her mother hurting. What did he say? Sarah asked. Everything, Jessica sighed. He admitted he's still married. He was planning to keep both families, going back and forth between Boston and here. He said his business needed him to have a family image in Boston, but he wanted me too. Jessica's voice broke. Like I was some kind of extra, a bonus wife he could visit when he wanted. Sarah felt anger rising inside her. What a terrible person. What's he doing now? Getting his things. He's leaving. Jessica looked at her watch. And I have 100 guests sitting outside waiting for a wedding that isn't going to happen. Just then, Emma and Diane came down the stairs, looking confused. Jessica, what's going on? Emma asked. Richard just stormed past us and started packing his bags. He looks furious. Jessica took a deep breath. Richard has been lying to everyone. He already has a wife and 2 children in Boston. Diane gasped. What? Are you serious? Sarah found the proof last night, Jessica explained, putting her arm around her daughter's shoulders. She showed me just in time. Emma's shocked expression quickly turned to anger. That lying, cheating. She stopped herself, glancing at Sarah. What can we do to help? Before Jessica could answer, they heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Richard appeared, carrying his overnight bag. His face was cold and hard. This is ridiculous, Jessica, he said. We could have worked something out. You're throwing away a good thing because of some outdated ideas about marriage. Emma stepped between Richard and Jessica. You need to leave. Now. Richard looked like he wanted to say more, but the determined faces of the 3 women stopped him. He turned to Sarah, his eyes narrowing. You just couldn't mind your own business, could you? Don't you dare speak to my daughter, Jessica said, her voice stronger now. She saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Richard shook his head and walked to the front door. You'll regret this, he said before slamming the door behind him. The 4 of them stood in silence for a moment. Then Diane spoke up. Jessica, what do you want to do about the guests? Jessica looked out the window at the decorated backyard. The white chairs were full of friends and family. The flower arch where she was supposed to say her vows stood at the front. The scene that had represented her future happiness now looked like a cruel joke. I have to tell them the truth, Jessica said finally. They deserve to know why there won't be a wedding today. Are you sure? Emma asked gently. We could just say you're sick, or there's been an emergency. Jessica shook her head. No more lies. I'm going to face this with honesty. Sarah took her mother's hand. I'll come with you. Jessica smiled at her daughter. Thank you, sweetheart. Jessica went back upstairs to change. She didn't put her wedding dress back on, but she fixed her hair and put on a simple blue dress. When she came back downstairs, the wedding planner was waiting, looking stressed. "Mrs. Collins, the guests are getting restless. The ceremony was supposed to start 15 minutes ago. Where is Mr. Maxwell?" "Mr. Maxwell won't be joining us today," Jessica said calmly. "In fact, there won't be a wedding. But I would like to speak to everyone." The wedding planner looked shocked, but nodded. I'll let the officiant know." Jessica turned to Sarah, Emma, and Diane. "I'm ready." Together, they walked out to the backyard. A murmur spread through the crowd as people noticed Jessica wasn't in her wedding dress. The officiant looked confused as Jessica took his place under the flower arch. Sarah stood close to her mother, offering silent support as Jessica prepared to tell everyone how her wedding day had turned into something completely unexpected. Jessica stood under the flower arch, looking out at the confused faces of her friends and family. The soft music that had been playing stopped. Everyone waited to hear what she would say. Sarah stayed right beside her mother, ready to support her if needed. "Thank you all for coming today," Jessica began, her voice shaking a little. "I know you were expecting a wedding, but there won't be one today." A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. Jessica's parents, sitting in the front row, looked worried. "Less than an hour ago, I learned something important about Richard," Jessica continued. "My daughter Sarah discovered that Richard already has a wife and 2 children in Boston." Gasps filled the air. Jessica's father half rose from his seat, his face red with anger. "Richard has been living a double life, going back and forth between his family there and his life with us here. He was planning to marry me today while still being married to someone else." Jessica paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry you all came for nothing. The food is already prepared and everything is paid for, so please stay and eat if you want to. Consider it a party to celebrate the truth." Jessica's mother came forward and hugged her daughter tightly. "Oh, Jessica, I'm so sorry." More guests came up to offer support. Jessica's old friend Mark, who had known her since high school, looked especially upset on her behalf. "Where is that lying snake now?" he asked, looking around as if ready to confront Richard. "He's gone," Sarah explained. "Mom told him to leave." While Jessica talked with her parents and close friends, Sarah noticed someone new arrive at the back of the yard. It was a woman with 2 children, a boy and a girl. The woman looked tired and upset. With a shock, Sarah recognized her from the pictures. It was Linda, Richard's real wife. Sarah quickly went to her mother. "Mom," she whispered, "Richard's wife is here with their kids." Jessica looked up in surprise. "What? Why would she come here?" Sarah pointed to where Linda stood awkwardly by the gate. Jessica excused herself from her parents and walked over to the woman, with Sarah following close behind. "Linda?" Jessica asked when they reached her. The woman nodded. "You must be Jessica. I'm sorry to come to your wedding like this." Linda's voice was tired but kind. "I needed to see for myself." "How did you know about today?" Jessica asked. "I found the invitation in Richard's office at home," Linda explained. "I've suspected for a while that he was seeing someone during his business trips, but I never imagined he would go this far." She looked at the wedding setup. "He was really going to marry you while still married to me." The 2 women looked at each other, both victims of the same man's lies. "I'm Linda Maxwell," she said, holding out her hand. "These are my children, Jason and Mia." The children looked uncomfortable and confused. The boy, about 12, stood protectively near his mother. The girl, maybe 10, half hid behind her brother. Jessica shook Linda's hand. "I'm Jessica Collins. This is my daughter, Sarah." Sarah smiled awkwardly at the children, who stared back with uncertain eyes. "Sarah is the one who found out about you," Jessica explained. "She saved me from making a terrible mistake today." Linda looked at Sarah with new respect. "Thank you for that. Richard has been lying to all of us for too long." Jessica hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to stay? There's plenty of food, and honestly, I think we have a lot to talk about." Linda seemed surprised by the offer, but nodded. "I would like that. I have so many questions." Jessica led Linda and her children to a quiet table away from the main crowd. Sarah helped get them drinks and food. It was strange to see her mother talking with Richard's wife, but there was no anger between them, only a shared understanding of Richard's betrayal. As they talked, Sarah washed her mother's face. Despite everything, Jessica seemed calm. There was even a small smile on her face as she spoke with Linda. Sarah realized her mother was actually relieved. The wedding was canceled, but Jessica had escaped a life of lies. Emma came over and whispered to Sarah, "Your mom is amazing. Most people would fall apart, but look at her, making friends with the other wife. She's handling this with so much grace." Sarah nodded proudly. "She's the strongest person I know." From across the yard, Sarah noticed her mother's friend Mark watching Jessica with a thoughtful expression. He had always been kind to Sarah, helping her with school projects and coming to her basketball games, even after he and Jessica had stopped dating years ago. Sarah wondered if maybe, when her mother was ready, there might be a better man waiting for her, someone honest and true. As the afternoon went on, the event that was supposed to be a wedding turned into something unexpected. Most guests stayed, curious about the drama and wanting to support Jessica. The catering staff served the food, and the band that had been hired for the reception began to play soft music. Jessica and Linda sat together for over an hour, talking quietly. Their children sat nearby, awkwardly getting to know each other. Sarah learned that Jason was 12 and Mia was 10. They seemed nice, but understandably confused by the whole situation. "So your dad was going to marry my mom while still being married to your mom?" Sarah asked Jason when the adults were deep in conversation. Jason nodded, looking at the ground. "I didn't even know Dad had another life. He was just gone a lot for business trips. Mom cried a lot when he wasn't home." Sarah felt sorry for Jason and Mia. She had lost respect for Richard, but these kids had lost their image of their father. That seemed worse somehow. Meanwhile, Linda was showing Jessica something on her phone. "I found these emails last month," Linda explained. "He has been taking money from my family's business accounts too. My father started that company, and Richard has been stealing from it to buy you gifts." Jessica looked shocked. "The necklace he gave me yesterday. It must have cost thousands of dollars." Linda nodded sadly. "The police are already looking into the missing money. I hadn't told them about you yet because I wasn't completely sure. But now, I'll help in any way I can," Jessica promised. "I had no idea he was stealing." Sarah noticed her grandmother approaching. Grandma Collins was a small woman with white hair and a determined walk. She had been watching Jessica and Linda for some time with a puzzled expression. "Jessica, dear," Grandma Collins said, "I don't mean to interrupt, but is this Richard's wife?" "Yes, Mom, this is Linda," Jessica said. "Linda, this is my mother, Margaret Collins." Linda stood and shook Grandma Collins' hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Collins. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." Grandma Collins looked between the two women. "Well, in all my 70 years, I've never seen two women handle such a situation with such dignity. Most would be at each other's throats, but here you are, talking like old friends." Jessica smiled. "We're both victims here, Mom. Being angry at each other wouldn't help anything." "Well said," Grandma Collins nodded approvingly. Then she turned to Linda's children. "And who are these young ones? Come with me to the dessert table. The wedding cake is still there, and it seems a shame to waste it." Jason and Mia looked to their mother, who nodded. They followed Grandma Collins, with Sarah joining them. As they walked to the dessert table, Sarah saw Mark approaching her mother and Linda. He carried 3 glasses of lemonade and offered them to the women with a kind smile. Jessica introduced him to Linda, and soon they were all talking together. "Your grandma is nice," Maya said to Sarah as they reached the cake table. She is, Sarah agreed. She always says that good can come from bad situations if you look for it. Grandma Collins cut generous slices of the wedding cake for each child. It's a beautiful cake, she said. Even if there's no wedding, we can still enjoy it. Across the yard, Sarah noticed two police officers arriving at the gate. The wedding planner was speaking to them, pointing toward Jessica and Linda. Sarah wondered if they were here about Richard stealing from Linda's family business. Sarah, Jason said suddenly, is that your dad over there? He pointed to Mark, who was still talking with Jessica and Linda. No, Sarah said. That's Mark. He's an old friend of my mom's. My real dad left us 5 years ago. Oh, Jason looked thoughtful. He seems nice. He keeps making your mom laugh even though this is a sad day. Sarah watched Mark with new interest. He had always been around, helping when needed, but staying in the background. Today, he seemed different, more present, more important somehow. The police officers were now talking to Jessica and Linda. Both women looked serious, nodding as the officers took notes. Sarah hoped Richard would get in trouble for what he had done. He deserved it after hurting so many people. Diane came over to the children at the dessert table. Sarah, your mom asked me to tell you that she and Linda need to go to the police station to make statements about Richard's activities. Your grandparents will take you home. Linda's children will go with them too, and Linda will pick them up later. Is Mom okay? Sarah asked, worried. She's fine, Diane assured her. Actually, she seems stronger than I've ever seen her. And she said to tell you that she's proud of you for being brave enough to tell her the truth this morning. Sarah felt a rush of relief and pride. This morning, she had been so afraid to show her mother the evidence about Richard. Now she knew it had been the right thing to do. As she watched her mother leave with Linda and the police officers, Sarah realized that sometimes doing the hard thing was the same as doing the right thing. And sometimes, what seemed like the end of a dream was really just the beginning of something better. The next morning, Sarah woke up to the smell of pancakes. She went downstairs and found her grandparents in the kitchen. Grandma Collins was at the stove flipping pancakes while Grandpa Collins read the newspaper. Good morning, sleepyhead, Grandma Collins said with a smile. Your mother called. She'll be home soon. Sarah sat at the kitchen table. Is she okay? She sounds better than okay, Grandpa Collins said, putting down his newspaper. She said the police have Richard in custody. He tried to leave town last night, but they caught him at the bus station. Sarah felt relieved. After everything Richard had done, he deserved to face the consequences. What about Linda and her kids? Sarah asked, thinking about Jason and Mia. They stayed at a hotel last night, Grandma Collins explained as she placed a stack of pancakes in front of Sarah. Linda needs to sort out some legal matters here before they go back to Boston. Sarah poured maple syrup on her pancakes, thinking about the strange turn of events. Yesterday was supposed to be her mother's wedding day. Instead, it had exposed a liar and brought together two families who never knew about each other. The front door opened, and Jessica walked in. She looked tired but calm. She had changed into fresh clothes and had taken out all the fancy pins from her wedding hairstyle. Mom. Sarah jumped up and hugged her mother. Are you okay? Jessica hugged her daughter back tightly. I'm fine, sweetheart. It's been a long night, but I'm okay. Jessica sat down at the table, and Grandma Collins placed a cup of coffee in front of her. Thanks, Mom, Jessica said gratefully. For everything. For taking care of Sarah. For handling things yesterday after I left. That's what family is for, Grandma Collins said simply. Now eat something. You must be starving. As Jessica ate breakfast, she told them what had happened at the police station. Richard had been arrested for financial fraud. He had been taking money from Linda's family business for over a year. He used the money to maintain his double life, paying for trips, gifts, and even the wedding. Linda showed them all the evidence, Jessica explained. Bank records, emails, everything. Richard tried to deny it at first, but when they caught him trying to leave town, he broke down and confessed. What will happen to him now? Sarah asked. He'll face charges for the fraud, Jessica said, and Linda is filing for divorce. It's going to be a long legal process, but he won't be able to hurt anyone else. The phone rang, and Grandma Collins answered it. Yes, she's here. Just a moment. She handed the phone to Jessica. It's Mark. Jessica took the phone, and Sarah noticed a small smile appear on her mother's face as she spoke with Mark. After a short conversation, Jessica hung up. Mark is coming over later, Jessica told them. He wants to help clean up the backyard. There's still a lot of wedding decorations out there. Grandpa Collins nodded approvingly. He's a good man, that Mark, always ready to help. Just then, the doorbell rang. Sarah went to answer it and found Linda standing there with Jason and Mia. Good morning, Linda said. We hope we're not intruding. Not at all, Sarah said, inviting them in. We're just having breakfast. In the kitchen, Jessica stood up to greet Linda. The two women looked at each other, and then, to Sarah's surprise, they hugged. How are you doing? Jessica asked. Better than expected, Linda replied. The hotel gave us a nice room, and the kids slept well. She looked at Jessica's parents. Thank you for watching over my children yesterday. They're lovely kids, Grandma Collins said. Would you all like some pancakes? As Linda and her children sat down at the table, Sarah marveled at how natural it felt. 2 days ago, she hadn't known these people existed. Now they were sitting in her kitchen, sharing breakfast like old friends. We're going back to Boston tomorrow, Linda told Jessica, but I wanted to come by and thank you and Sarah properly. If Sarah hadn't found out the truth, she didn't finish the sentence. I'm glad she did, Jessica said, squeezing Sarah's hand. For both our sakes. I'd also wanted to give you this, Linda said, pulling out a small box from her purse. She handed it to Jessica. Jessica opened it and found the diamond necklace that Richard had given her before the wedding. He bought this with money from my father's company, Linda explained. It belongs to my family, but I want you to have it. Sell it and use the money however you want. Consider it compensation for what you've been through. Jessica tried to refuse, but Linda insisted. Please, it would make me feel better knowing something good came from all this. Sarah watched her mother accept the gift with grace. In that moment, she realized something important. Sometimes the worst days could lead to the best outcomes. Her mother hadn't gotten married yesterday, but she had found truth, justice, and new friendships. Later that day, Mark arrived to help clean up the backyard. He brought his truck to take away the wedding arch and chairs. Sarah watched from the kitchen window as her mother and Mark worked together, taking down decorations and folding up tablecloths. They look good together, Grandma Collins said, coming to stand beside Sarah at the window. Sarah nodded. There was something natural about the way her mother and Mark moved around each other, laughing as they worked. It was different from how Jessica had been with Richard. With Richard, her mother had always seemed a little nervous, always trying to be perfect. With Mark, she was relaxed and real. Did they date before? Sarah asked her grandmother. She knew Mark had been her mother's friend for years, but Jessica never talked much about him. A long time ago, before she met your father, Grandma Collins explained. Mark wanted to marry her back then, but Jessica wasn't ready. Then she met your father, and well, she patted Sarah's shoulder, but Mark never stopped caring about her. A good man, that one. Sarah went outside to help. The day was warm and sunny, making yesterday's events seem like a bad dream. Linda and her children had gone back to their hotel after breakfast, promising to stay in touch. Hey, kiddo, Mark said when he saw Sarah. Want to help me fold up this tent? Sarah nodded and grabbed one end of the large white tent that had covered the dessert table. As they worked, Mark asked her about school and her basketball team. He remembered she had a big game coming up next week, even though Sarah had only mentioned it once months ago. Will you come watch? Sarah asked him. Wouldn't miss it, Mark promised. I've seen every game for 3 years. No reason to stop now. Sarah realized he was right. Mark had been at all her games, usually sitting quietly in the back. He was always there, supporting them, even before he and her mother started dating again. The thought made Sarah feel warm inside. By late afternoon, the yard was clean. No one would guess that a wedding had almost happened there yesterday. Jessica invited Mark to stay for dinner, and he accepted with a smile that made Sarah's mother blush slightly. During dinner, Jessica's phone rang. She answered it and then stepped into the hallway to talk. When she came back, she looked serious. That was Linda, she told them. The police found more evidence in Richard's apartment. He's been doing this to other women too. At least 2 others in different cities. You mean he has more wives? Sarah asked, shocked. Not wives, Jessica explained, but he was in relationships with them, promising to marry them someday. He took money from them too. Mark shook his head in disgust. The man is a con artist. He targeted successful women and used their money to fund his lifestyle. Linda says they want us to testify against him, Jessica continued. All of us, me, Linda, and the other women. Together, we can make sure he goes to jail for a long time. Will you do it? Grandma Collins asked. Jessica nodded firmly. Yes, it won't be easy to tell my story in court, but it's the right thing to do. We need to stop him from hurting anyone else. Sarah felt proud of her mother's courage. Jessica had gone from being heartbroken yesterday to being strong and determined today. Later that evening, after Mark had gone home with plans to return for Sunday lunch tomorrow, Sarah found her mother sitting on the back porch. The stars were out, and the night was peaceful. Are you sad, Mom? Sarah asked, sitting beside her. Jessica put her arm around her daughter. Not really. I'm disappointed that Richard wasn't who I thought he was, and I'm sad that I almost made a terrible mistake. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful for what? For you, Jessica said, kissing Sarah's forehead. For your bravery in showing me the truth. For our family who supported us through everything. And for the chance to start over with my eyes wide open. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, looking at the stars. Sarah thought about how differently things might have turned out if she hadn't found that picture of Richard's other family. Her mother might be married to a liar now. Their lives would be built on a foundation of lies. Mom, Sarah said suddenly, Grandma told me that Mark wanted to marry you a long time ago. Is that true? Jessica looked surprised, then smiled softly. Yes, it's true. We were very young then. I wasn't ready for marriage. And then I met your father. She paused. Mark is a good man. He's always been there for us. I like him, Sarah said simply. I like him too, Jessica admitted. But right now, I need time to heal from all this, and Mark understands that. Sarah nodded, leaning her head on her mother's shoulder. Sometimes the best things came from unexpected places, she thought. Like how her mother's canceled wedding had brought them closer together and opened doors to new possibilities. 6 months later, Sarah sat in the courthouse waiting room, nervously smoothing her skirt. Today was the final day of Richard's trial. Soon, the judge would announce the sentence. Sarah's mother sat beside her, looking calm and strong in her blue dress. Are you ready? Jessica asked, taking her daughter's hand. Sarah nodded. The past 6 months had been busy and sometimes hard. Sarah had testified about finding the evidence of Richard's other family. Jessica and Linda had both given emotional testimony about Richard's lies and the money he had stolen. 2 other women had also come forward with similar stories about Richard. The courtroom doors opened, and Linda walked in with Jason and Mia. Over the months, the 2 families had become friends. Linda and her children had visited several times, and Sarah had even spent a week in Boston during spring break. Jason and Mia were nice kids, and Sarah enjoyed being like a big sister to them. Linda sat down next to Jessica. Nervous? She asked. A little, Jessica admitted, but ready for this to be over. Mark arrived and took the seat on Jessica's other side. He and Jessica had been dating officially for the past 3 months. They were taking things slowly, but Sarah could see how happy her mother was with him. Mark was patient and kind, never pushing Jessica to move faster than she was ready for. "Whatever happens today," Mark said, "remember that he can't hurt any of you anymore." The bailiff called them into the courtroom. They all filed in and took seats in the front row. Richard sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer. He looked thinner and older than Sarah remembered. He didn't turn around to look at them. The judge entered, and everyone stood. After everyone was seated again, the judge began to speak. "Richard Maxwell, you have been found guilty of multiple counts of fraud, theft, and deception. Your actions caused significant financial and emotional harm to multiple families." Sarah listened as the judge listed all of Richard's crimes. It was still hard to believe that the man who had almost become her stepfather was actually a criminal who had hurt so many people. "I sentence you to 8 years in prison," the judge announced finally, "and you are ordered to pay back all the money you stole from your victims." Richard's shoulders slumped. His lawyer whispered something to him, but Richard just shook his head. As the bailiff led Richard away, he finally turned and looked at them. His eyes met Sarah's for a brief moment. She thought she saw regret there, but it was too late for that now. Richard had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited to hear about the sentencing. Jessica, Linda, and the other victims had agreed to make a statement together. They stood side by side on the courthouse steps. "Today, justice was served," Jessica said into the microphones. "Richard Maxwell deceived all of us, but together, we stopped him from hurting anyone else." Linda spoke next. "We want other women to know that they should trust their instincts. If something doesn't feel right, look deeper, and don't be afraid to speak the truth, even when it's difficult." Sarah stood proudly beside her mother as the cameras flashed. She remembered how scared she had been 6 months ago, wondering if she should show her mother the evidence she had found. Now she knew that the truth, even when painful, was always better than living with lies. After the reporters left, the group went to a restaurant to celebrate the end of the trial. It was strange to celebrate something that had started as such a sad event, but today felt like a true ending to the whole difficult story. "I have something to tell everyone," Linda announced during lunch. "Jason, Mia, and I are moving here permanently. I've been offered a job at the hospital, and we found a nice house just 20 minutes from yours, Jessica." Jessica hugged her friend. "That's wonderful news." "And I have some news too," Mark said, looking a bit nervous. He turned to Jessica. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I respect that completely. But I wanted to ask if you'd consider moving in together. No pressure, no rush. Just when you're ready." The table went quiet. Sarah held her breath, watching her mother's face. Jessica smiled. "I think we're ready," she said, taking Mark's hand. "Sarah and I have talked about it, and we both feel it's the right next step." Sarah nodded in agreement. Mark had become an important part of their lives, and she loved seeing how happy he made her mother. As they ate and talked, Sarah looked around the table at this unexpected family they had formed. Her mother was laughing at something Mark said. Linda was helping Mia with her food. Jason was telling Grandma Collins about his new school. None of this would have happened if Sarah hadn't found that picture 6 months ago. What had started as the worst day of her mother's life had somehow led to all this happiness. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the best endings come from the most unexpected beginnings. That night, as Sarah got ready for bed, her mother came to tuck her in, just like when she was little. "I'm proud of you," Jessica said, sitting on the edge of Sarah's bed. "You saved me from making a terrible mistake, and you did it because you love me." "I just wanted you to be happy, Mom," Sarah said. "Really happy, not fake happy with someone like Richard." "And I am happy," Jessica assured her. "Happier than I've ever been. And it's because of you." As her mother kissed her goodnight and turned out the light, Sarah smiled in the darkness. They had all learned something important, that sometimes exposing a dark secret leads to finding the brightest light.